Hey everybody, in this lesson we're going to work with the four common temperature scales of Celsius, Fahrenheit, Kelvin, and Rankine, and make sure that you can switch between all those pretty quickly and easily. That'll be useful for when you're learning about HVAC systems and need to switch between temperature scales. There's a few formulas in this lesson. They're not difficult formulas, but they're important ones, and so make sure that you have your formula sheet handy and that you jot down the various formulas from this lesson on your note sheet. So let's take a look. So let's start by looking at the two most common temperature scales, the Fahrenheit scale that we use almost every day when we check the temperature outside, and the Celsius or centigrade scale, which is the most common metric scale. So the two most common points that people memorize about these scales are the boiling point of water and the freezing point of water. You might remember from some science that you've had before that the boiling point of water happens at 100 degrees Celsius, but it happens at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Whereas you probably also remembered that the freezing point of water happens at 0 degrees Celsius and about 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And so we can relate those two scales by the fact that 100 degrees on the Celsius scale corresponds to a 180 degree increase. That's from 32 up to 212 on the Fahrenheit scale. And that's where these two formulas right here come from. The top formula tells you how to find Fahrenheit if you know the Celsius temperature, and the bottom formula tells you how to find Celsius if you know the Fahrenheit temperature. So let's just take a look at a couple of examples. Our first one, let's convert 190 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. Well, notice here that we're trying to find a Celsius temperature and we're given a Fahrenheit temperature. So we should be using this formula right here. This is the formula that tells us Celsius if we know Fahrenheit. And so the formula says that our Celsius temperature will be 5/9 times our Fahrenheit temperature, that's our F, 190 degrees Fahrenheit minus 32, and that's in parentheses. So 190 minus 32, that means our Celsius temperature is 5/9 times 158. And to do that on your calculator, we're going to take 158 times 5 divided by 9. 158 times 5 divided by 9, and we get a value of 87.77, or it'll be close enough to say that that is about 87.8. Now always put your units on here so we know what we just switched to. Those are degrees Celsius, and we've done that conversion. Our other one, let's convert 5 degrees Celsius to degrees Fahrenheit. Well, this time we're starting with C, we know that, and we want to find F. And so we're going to have to use this formula where we'll be told our Fahrenheit value if we know our Celsius value. So we're going to take 1.8 times our Celsius value, in this case that is 5, and then we add on 32. So your calculator will tell you that 1.8 times 5, order of operations, we do that multiplication first. 1.8 times 5, that's going to be 9 plus 32, and our new Fahrenheit temperature has to be 9 plus 32, that is 41 degrees. And again, we'll label that that is now a Fahrenheit temperature. So it's pretty easy to switch between those two. But there's two other important scales that are based on the idea of absolute zero. Whether you're talking about a gas, a liquid, or a solid, the thing that determines its temperature is its thermal energy. And if you let something cool completely off, and that's possible, that is to say, if it has no thermal energy or no heat, then that temperature would be absolute zero, the coldest possible temperature. Now that occurs at 273 degrees below 0 Celsius, or about 460 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. So then you might ask, well, rather than making 0 the point where water freezes on the Celsius scale, why not move the 0 all the way down to absolute zero? Well, you can, and that gives us the Kelvin scale. So if you look at this picture, you can see that the Celsius scale and the Kelvin scale are exactly the same, except we move 0 from up here at the freezing point of water down here to absolute zero. and then water freezes at 273 degrees above that, or 273 Kelvin, and then water boils 100 degrees above that at 373 degrees Kelvin. And so these two formulas help us convert between Celsius and Kelvin, where all we need to do is either add or subtract 273 degrees. So let's take a look at an example. Let's convert 200 Kelvin to degrees Celsius. Well, we're looking for degrees Celsius, so we're going to use this formula. Celsius is found by taking our Kelvin temperature, which would be 200, and we subtract off 273 degrees. And so the Celsius temperature then would be negative 73 degrees. So at 73 degrees below 0 Celsius, that is equal to 200 degrees Kelvin. Our other one here, convert 26 degrees Celsius to Kelvin. Okay, well this time we want to find the Kelvin temperature, so to find K we're going to take the Celsius temperature and we're going to add 273 degrees. That's pretty easy. So our Kelvin will be 26 plus 273, and our Kelvin temperature turns out to be 299 degrees. And it's no big deal, but technically the units on Kelvin are just kelvins. They aren't actually degrees. And so we say 299 Kelvin, but we don't actually call them degrees Kelvin. No big deal. The Rankine scale uses the exact same idea, but it does so based on the Fahrenheit scale. So we take the temperature of 0 degrees on the Fahrenheit scale, which would be right about here, and we move it down to absolute 0. And therefore all the temperatures on the Rankine scale are 460 degrees above those on the Fahrenheit scale. And so now you have these two formulas, the conversion between Fahrenheit and Rankine and Fahrenheit. So let's do these two examples. If we want to convert 500 Rankine to Fahrenheit, our formula right here says that if we want a Fahrenheit value, we need to take our Rankine value, in this case that's 500, and we subtract 460. And so our Fahrenheit value is 500 minus 460, 40 degrees Fahrenheit would be the equivalent temperature. And that should make sense. 500 Rankine is 500 degrees above absolute 0. That's only 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a cool day outside. Cool day outside is about 500 degrees Rankine. And our other one here, 35 degrees Fahrenheit to Rankine. Well, here we're looking for a Rankine value, and so our formula right here says that R is equal to the Fahrenheit value plus 460. And so our Rankine temperature will be 35 degrees plus 460 degrees. And that means our Rankine temperature is 495 degrees. And that's all there is to that. Pretty easy math as long as you're using the right formula. But let's take a couple of two-step temperature conversions here. Let's convert 86 degrees Fahrenheit to Kelvin. Well, what we're going to do here is we can't go straight from Fahrenheit to Kelvin, but what we can do is we can go from Fahrenheit to Celsius and then go from Celsius to Kelvin. So let's do that. We saw earlier that our Celsius temperature is 5/9 times the Fahrenheit temperature. That means our Celsius temperature will be 5/9 times our Fahrenheit temperature of 86 minus 32. Or in other words, our Celsius temperature will be 5/9 times 86 minus 32. That's 54. And 54 times 5 divided by 9 turns out to be 30 degrees Celsius. But we're not done. We wanted to get to Kelvin. And so as we saw just a minute ago, the Kelvin temperature is found by taking the Celsius temperature and adding 273. So our Kelvin temperature will be our Celsius temperature of 30 plus 273, and our Kelvin temperature then is going to be 303 Kelvin. Here again, Kelvin doesn't use degrees, but 86 degrees Fahrenheit, that's a nice warm summer day, is about 303 Kelvin. The key there, we couldn't go straight from Fahrenheit to Kelvin, so we went Fahrenheit to Celsius and then to Kelvin. So the thing I want you to recognize there is we have a formula to go from Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius. We saw that earlier. And we can go from Fahrenheit to degrees Rankine, and we can go from Celsius to kelvins. And so if we want to go from Fahrenheit to Kelvin, we have to go around this way. Or if we want to go from degrees Celsius to Rankine, we have to go around this way. We're going to have to do 2 conversions at a time. And here's an example of that very thing. Let's convert 90 degrees Celsius to degrees Rankine. So 90 degrees Celsius, and we want to go to degrees Rankine. First we'll go from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So our Fahrenheit temperature is 1.8 times our Celsius temperature. Is 1.8 times our Celsius temperature, and then we add 32 to that. So that means our Fahrenheit temperature will be 1.8 times 90, and then we'll add 32. That means our Fahrenheit temperature is going to be 162 plus 32, or in other words, 194 degrees. And now we can go from Fahrenheit to Rankine because the Rankine temperature is simply the Fahrenheit temperature plus 460 degrees. And so our Rankine temperature will be 194 plus 460, and that gives us 654 degrees Rankine. So we went from Celsius to Fahrenheit to Rankine. Okay, well, I would like you to try just one of these. Take a minute and pause the video, see if you can convert 350 Kelvin to degrees Fahrenheit. Unpause to see if you get the correct value. Okay, well, to perform this conversion, we're going to have to go through degrees Celsius. So we'll go from 350 Kelvin into centigrade or Celsius, and then we'll convert that to Fahrenheit. So we saw earlier that degrees Celsius is found by taking the Kelvin temperature and subtracting 273. So our Celsius temperature will be 350 minus 273, and that means our Celsius temperature is 77 degrees. Now from there we'll go to Fahrenheit. We saw earlier that our Fahrenheit temperature is found by taking 1.8 times the Celsius temperature and then adding 32. And so our Fahrenheit temperature will be 1.8 times 77, and then we'll add 32. And so our Fahrenheit temperature is 1.8 times 77, which is 138.6, plus 32 puts us at a Fahrenheit temperature of 170.6 degrees. And we did the conversion again. Kelvins to centigrade or Celsius, and then from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay, so just a couple of things to summarize. Make sure that you have 6 temperature conversion formulas on your sheet. First of all, these 2 for converting between Fahrenheit and Celsius. These 2 for converting between Celsius and Kelvin. And these 2 for converting between Rankine and Fahrenheit. And with those 6 formulas, you can really convert any temperature to any other temperature. There are other conversion formulas that will switch directly, but we don't need them all. Those 6 will get any conversion that you need to do by using them in conjunction with one another if you need to. So, short lesson there. Make sure to let me know if you need help with those or with the assigned problems. I'm happy to do that, and we'll see you in our next lesson.